Hello, my name is Hannah, and I am a instructor at the Turing School of Software and Design. And today I'm going to be talking about how to use Postman to test out gets, post, and delete requests. But before we get started, make sure you visit the Postman website and go ahead and download the application here. You can also create an account if you'd like, but this is optional. Okay, now that we have downloaded Postman and we have the application on our laptop, let's go ahead and get started using it. So we should have this dashboard whenever we open up the application, and we should see a couple different options here. We've got new, we've got some blank history, some collections. This is essentially our workspace where all of our network requests are going to live. And if you've made an account, you can actually save your network request so you can go back later and look at them. It's not necessary to have an account. Again, this is just going to be something we'll use to test out APIs, but if you want to save them to your own account, it's good to know that that is an option. So I'm going to get started by writing a GET request first. So the first thing that I want to do is create a new tab by clicking this plus button here. So I get this untitled request screen first off, and it does actually have GET selected for me already. I have a drop down here where I can change the options, but I'm going to stick with this GET request. So what I want to do first is, of course, grab the URL that I would like to be requesting from. So I have this Pokemon API pulled up here, and it's got a couple different options of Pokemon that I can request. So let's get started by grabbing this first part here. We're going to put that in this little text box. All right, so I have the Poke API version 2, and now I want to actually choose a Pokemon. And my favorite is Snorlax, so we are going to search for him. Oops, make sure I spell it right. Okay, great. So we know that Snorlax is a Pokemon that the Poke API supports. Grab the rest of this URL here. Okay, awesome. So I've got the full URL for requesting this data on Snorlax. So to do a GET request in Postman, all I need to do is put in this URL, make sure GET is selected, and send it off. All right, great. So I've received some data back that does match what is in this kind of website here. Right? I've got all of these abilities, forms, all kind of information about Snorlax. And I can see that it matches exactly what is in the Postman window. I can also see that we have a status of 200 or OK, which makes sense, right? Because we're seeing that data. We can see that this was successful. So you may be wondering, what benefit does this provide me as a developer? Pulling up this GET request in this Postman environment does look exactly the same if I were to just pull it up in the browser, right? If we would put in the same thing and send it off in Chrome. Okay, so we've got the same thing here. I do have a extension parsing this so it looks a little bit prettier, but it is the same information, right? So again, Postman is just a tool. It can be helpful for you to see this out in the Postman environment, making sure that you are sending all of the correct data before you are actually using this in your application, right? So maybe you are trying to send off a GET request by using fetch, right, in a project or something, and maybe you're having some issues. Maybe it's not working as expected. It can be helpful to use Postman to send off the request, and this can help you make sure that you don't have any typos. Maybe you're, doing everything correctly, and it can be a good way to visualize that. So going back, if I maybe want to see if there is a Pokemon called Hannah, because I think I should be a Pokemon apparently. When we send this one off, we are going to get back not found, which matches our status 404 not found. So again, this can help you see, okay, maybe I'm spelling something wrong. This is why my request is not working. And I can use this information to make sure that I am sending off the correct Pokemon and it is spelled right. Cool. So that is a GET request. Let's move on to a POST request. So let's just revisit this Pokemon API first and make sure that a POST request is supported. So what I want to do first is check out the docs. All right, so I get to this information page and I can see first off that it says this is a consumption-only API. Only the HTTP GET method is available on resources. Okay, so this means that I'm not actually able to post to the Pokemon API. And you'll see this pretty frequently if you ever decide to mess around with any of the free APIs online. There are tons of them. And these are mostly for developers to practice, right? Maybe practice working with data. Maybe they want to create a Pokemon application for learning a new language or something. But we don't want to really post to these APIs. First of all, it would not work, right? It is not supported. It's not set up to accept a post or a delete or any of those other requests, right? Because imagine if we could just create new Pokemon. We could post, maybe I was a Pokemon, maybe I wanted to delete my least favorite Pokemon. That wouldn't really be a great experience for developers that want to use the API, right? It could kind of get a little crazy. All the Pokemon would be deleted. We would be sending bad data. So this API is GET only. We do not have the ability to post or delete. But I do have an API we can use to practice our post requests. So this is one that Turing has created that essentially is some trip data. So we have an array of some objects that have some information, mostly IDs, some travelers, a date, status, a couple different things. But this API has been set up to accept post and delete requests. So this is a great thing to practice on so that we can get some practice writing our posts. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that URL. And I want to create a new tab just to kind of stay organized so I can still kind of see my GET over here. But I'm going to switch it to post and enter that URL. All right, so to do a post request on Postman, we do need to add a couple other things. So first we're going to start with the body, and we know that we need to be sending some data. We want to make sure that raw is selected, and instead of text, we want to be sending JSON. All right, so we've got that set up, and I'm actually just going to copy this right here. Make sure to put that in an object though. Space it out just a little bit. Okay, so I don't want to send one that already exists, so I'm going to change the ID to something really obvious, okay? Just to test it out to make sure that I'm going to be posting this new trip. I'll change the user ID, the destination ID, I don't know, make it really obvious that this is a new trip. All right, so I've got my URL. I have added something to the body, made sure that it is JSON. And this is going to be the new piece of data that we are posting to the trips endpoint. So let's go ahead and send it. All right, cool. So we got this message here. It says our resource with this ID was successfully posted. Awesome. So we also got our 201 status over here, indicating that this has been created. So I can now go ahead and get this, and hopefully I should see my new trip. Okay, just make another GET with that same URL here and send it off. Okay. All right. So at the very bottom, we can see our new resource with that crazy ID full of 9s. So we can see that this has worked. And again, if we go over to the browser and we refresh, we can see that it has been added here. So it's good to know that all of these requests don't just live in the Postman environment. They are actually creating these post requests for you, which can be helpful when maybe you just quickly want to add a piece of data instead of writing your whole fetch request in your project, waiting for your code to run just to add something very quickly. I would recommend looking at Postman to just add that new resource, and then you should be able to see it here. So let's go back to our post request, and I want to post another one, but this time I'm going to change the destination ID to add a couple more 9s, just for fun. And maybe I'm going to change the date as well. Maybe I want to say March 9th, 2021. Make sure to put a comment there. Okay, so this time I'm going to send it again. All right, and I got an error message back. I got this message saying invalid date format submitted. And then I also got this helpful error code of 422, meaning that I have some sort of semantic error here. Now, again, we do run into these errors when we are writing code, right? Maybe we've not sent off the correct format. Using Postman to test this first can be a lot quicker, maybe less stressful, making sure that we have everything set up in the correct format before we are actually writing it into our code. So we know that the other way worked. Just wanted you to see kind of what it looked like when we did something wrong, when we got an error. And Postman is going to be really helpful for debugging these types of things. All right, so I'd like to show you a delete request next. Okay, so we're going to switch this over here to our delete. And I'm going to be working with that same URL here. All right. And this one, I decided I don't actually want. I think that ID is a little crazy. I was really just doing it for testing reasons, so I'm going to just delete it. So to do that, I'm going to need this ID. Let's hop back over to our delete tab. And we're going to need to add something to the body, just like a post request. And again, we want to make sure that raw is checked and JSON. I'm sure that there's a way to make sure that these are checked by default, kind of in your Postman settings, but I haven't done that yet. All right, so to process a delete request, I'm only going to need the ID of the item that I want to delete, not that whole object of data that we needed for a post request, since we're creating. For delete, we only are going to need to use that ID. So looking over, I should be good to go. I've got my endpoint. I've got the ID of the item that I don't want anymore, and I'm going to send it off. Okay, and we got this helpful message here saying that our trip with this ID number has been deleted. And again, we got a status of 200 saying that this was successful, which is, again, what we want. If I go ahead and run my GET request again to that same endpoint, I can see that it is no longer showing up, all right? And just to be super sure, I'm going to run back over to the browser where I have this endpoint submitted, and it is gone. So again, just to reiterate, when we are using Postman to post and delete, this is actually running that request to our endpoint. So this will be deleted for anybody who is using the API. So again, really helpful when maybe you submitted the wrong data, maybe you just submitted some test data, but you don't actually want it to be there. You can run a quick delete and it will wipe it out for you. All right, so that was how to get, post, and delete with Postman. And I hope that this has been helpful for you in knowing that Postman is a good tool for you to practice your gets, deletes, posts, and more. Thanks.